I am a training and development specialist for the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. Thank you all for coming today to our presentation over one-click college admit. Just to give you a heads up, we are going to have a quick poll question. My colleague is going to drop that in the chat for me, just to kind of give us an idea of where you all are at in your understanding of OCCA. So if you can just take a couple of seconds to go ahead and drop your answer for us. Okay, thank you, everybody. Oh, looks like we've got a couple more. All right, thank you to everybody who answered. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Okay. So like you just heard, my name is Nicole Boyd. I'll be your presenter for today's session. I do have several colleagues on the call with me to kind of help me with answering any questions. If you want to drop any questions that come up during the presentation in the Q&A. And like I said, today we're just going to be doing an overview of OCCA. So here's what our agenda looks like for today. We're going to start off with a more general overview of one-click college admit, and then we're going to do an overview of the opt-in process specifically. We are going to designate a section of the presentation just for frequently asked questions to address some of the questions that we've been hearing in the field. So hopefully if you do have a question that you've been wanting answered, that will be addressed then. Otherwise, like I said, I do have colleagues on the call with me to help me in answering questions that come up during the presentation. We will then move on to taking a look at gap access and how that works with OCCA. Then we will touch on that GPA data transfer tool, and we will wrap up the presentation with some resources for you all to have. So starting off with that one-click college admit overview. If you don't know already, just some background. One-Click College Admit is Illinois' free direct admissions program for public universities and community colleges in the state of Illinois. So the benefit of OCCA is that for qualifying students, it removes those traditional college application barriers like application fees, essays, and letters of recommendation. So student eligibility is based simply on their high school GPA. So if they have a GPA that qualifies for that institution they're in, they don't need to worry about paying an application fee or doing those extra steps like getting a letter of recommendation. There are some other direct admissions initiatives out there that are not through the state of Illinois, for example, for low-income students or first-gen students, but for OCCA specifically, it is just based on student GPA. For this year and this year only, we have two versions available. So right now we do still have One-Click 1.0, the 1.0 version. That will be going away after our class of 2026. So only current seniors are able to participate, and then going forward, what we're calling the One-Click 2.0 version will be the only version. And so that will be for juniors. So our current juniors can participate. So that means our class of 2027 is currently participating in the 2.0 version. Here we have a map to help you visualize the opt-in participation by county throughout the state. This is pretty recent data. It is as of March 6th of 2026. Those numbers on the screen, the first number is the number of students who have opted in out of the number of districts with high schools in the county. So the current data shows that we currently have almost 4,000 public high school students, a little over 50 private high school students, 5 homeschool students, and 79 community college students who have opted in as of early March. So we're seeing opt-ins really gain momentum with what we hope to see the potential of reaching about 7,000 total opt-ins by the end of this year. So just to give you kind of an example, I'm from Madison County, so that was the one that I was looking at. So we can see that we have 52 students who have opted in out of 10 districts with high schools in the county. So I'll leave that up for a minute so you can find your county and see where you guys are at. And then let's get into the 1.0 process. So like I said, this is only for high school seniors, meaning our class of 2026. We currently have 8 public universities and 8 community colleges participating in the 1.0 version. So you will see when we get into the 2.0 version, you'll see that there are a lot more community colleges especially, but public universities as well participating. And a key difference between the 1.0 and 2.0 version is that 1.0 uses a self-reported GPA. So the application process is pretty straightforward. Seniors will simply create their Common App account like they normally do. One thing that I do want to clarify is that when we say Common App account, we literally just mean creating the account. They do not have to do the Common App in the sense that they are applying to all these schools in the typical way that a Common App would be. They are just making the account. So I do want to clarify that. So it's not, I understand that the Common App isn't a great option for every single student. So they do not have to do the Common App. They just have to set up the account. As they set up their account, they will indicate their home address as well as their GPA and the GPA scale that is used, and then Common App will simply run that weekly match. As far as the admission process, the Common App will email offers to students as well as students' parents if they provided their emails. And then the student will act on those direct admissions offers in the Common App. So what this means is that they quote unquote accept an offer. This does not mean that they're committing to enrolling at that institution. They're pretty much just saying, you know, okay, I'm in. That'll move that institution to their My Colleges tab, which shows the schools that they've been accepted into. Universities and colleges will be made aware of that offer being moved to that student's My Colleges tab. And then that's it. That is the student submitting their application through the Common App. So that was 1.0. Now moving on to 2.0. Again, this is for high school juniors. This will follow the direct admissions process that was defined in House Bill 3522. So it will follow that legislation. If you do want to read up on the legislation, that is going to outline how 2.0 is going to work. So high school juniors as well as community college students will be included. So if you have a community college student looking to transfer to a four-year institution, they can use OCCA to do so. They just have to have 30 transferable credit hours. I do want to add that students who have a GED are also eligible to participate in OCCA. Again, they just have to be enrolled at a community college in Illinois and again have 30 transferable credit hours. There are now 10 public universities participating in 2.0. with University of Illinois Chicago and University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign using a required outreach plan. So they are participating a little bit differently than the other 10 publics. Essentially, students who meet their GPA requirement will receive messaging encouraging them to apply. And then again, that key difference is that 2.0 uses a verified GPA, which does add an extra step to the application process. Because GPA is, a student's educational information, FERPA regulations require that a junior has to opt in to allow for their GPA to be shared with ISAC. The opt-in process is pretty simple and straightforward. Like I said, we're going to do a walkthrough of that in just a minute. And then institutions have to notify ISAC of their GPA requirement by March 1st. So that deadline has passed. Institutions have notified ISAC of their GPA requirements. For UI, UC, and UIC, again, it worked a little bit differently. They had to notify ISAC of their access criteria by February 1st. Then high schools have to provide student GPAs, the GPAs of the students who have opted in, to ISAC by July 1st, and then ISAC will run that match. For the admission process, ISAC will provide that match data to the Common App. So if a student submits a GPA and it matches with the school's requirement, the Common App will then send those direct admissions offers via email. Then there will be a link in the email where students can accept those offers through the Common App. I just want to say, just like 1.0, it's the same thing. They do not have to do the full Common App. Same thing, they just have to make an account. And then ISAC will provide those institutions with the name and the contact information of the students who received offers to their institution. So here's our public universities for the class of 2027. So the universities that are participating in direct admissions are essentially all of the 12 publics. We've got Chicago State, Eastern Illinois University, Governor State, Illinois State, Northeastern Illinois University, Northern Illinois University, Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and Edwardsville. I do want to point out that University of Illinois Springfield is participating in the standard direct admissions program, as well as Western Illinois University. And so it's University of Illinois Chicago and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign who are doing that special awareness and outreach campaign. And then here is the list of participating community colleges. You can see that has expanded quite a bit. So I'll just leave that up on the slide for a minute and you can find your community college district. So here's what the timeline looks like for the class of 2027. August 15th of 2025 was when that opt-in platform opened for high school juniors. And then it will close on May 22nd of 2026. So they have that whole time to opt in. Starting now in March into April of 2026, we will be hosting spring webinars on updates to OCCA and that GPA data transfer piece. May 22nd is the deadline, of course. So after that opt-in platform closes, students cannot make changes to their application and they cannot rescind their application after that deadline if they would, for whatever reason, choose to do so. Then July 1st of 2026 will be the deadline for schools to submit the GPAs of students who have opted in to ISAC. And then September 15th of 2026, so that would be current juniors' senior year, those students will be notified of their direct admissions offers and they will receive instructions on their next step. One thing that I do want to point out just while I'm thinking of it is that the application is to the institution, not specific programs. So for example, some schools will have, let's say a school of engineering that is more competitive to get into than for their general admissions. So I just want to point out that OCCA is for general admissions. So now let's take a look at the opt-in process. For the opt-in process, the program does require student consent for their GPA to be shared, or if the student is under the age of 18, that requires parent consent. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. One thing that I do want to point out is that you can save the application and continue later. So I know that that has been a concern, like what if we want to do a workshop with our juniors during the school day, and then most of them are under the age of 18. So how are we going to get that parent consent piece? So you'll see when we do the walkthrough, you can get pretty far in the application before you do need to provide the parent signature. So they can get almost completely through the application and then just save and continue later. That opt-in is required for the student to be matched for direct admission. And then ISAC will host the platform for students to opt in. It is accessible via the One-Click College Admit website, which is linked on the bottom of the slide. And then the platform should look pretty familiar if you're familiar with the non-participation form. It is modeled after it, so it kind of follows the same format. And then counselors can view the list of students who have opted in their class roster and gap access, which we will take a look at in just a minute. As far as the data that is collected on the opt-in form, the required required fields include the student's name, their permanent home address, their date of birth, telephone number, and their email address. Just like we would normally say, we recommend that they use a personal email address and not a school email address so that they continue to have access to their account after they graduate. And then they do have to put their high school that they attend or their community college that they attend, and that does need to be in Illinois school. So I know there has been a little bit of confusion about what if a student resides in Illinois, but then they go to school out of state. So like I said, in Madison County, I saw that sometimes with students who went to school in Missouri, but they lived in Illinois. Unfortunately, the data matching just wouldn't be possible for those out-of-state schools. So that is why they have to be attending in Illinois high school or community college. And then for community colleges specifically, they do need to enter their college ID number. Then there are some demographic questions for high school students if they wish to answer. It's completely optional, but those have to do with first generation status, race or ethnicity, their gender, and then the option to sign up for ISAC Q&A. So now let's start off with a walkthrough. Like I said, students do have to complete this process before that May 22nd deadline. Right now, there are kind of two different sections of the One-Click College Admit webpage for juniors and seniors. Of course, after this year, that senior section will be going away. So for juniors, of course, they would just be going to that junior section. So it's right up at the top. There's that red button that will take them to the opt-in form. So here is where they're going to start the application. It just lets them know that as long as they meet a university's GPA requirement, they are in. And then they can either log in if for whatever reason they have an account already, or they can just sign up. Again, we recommend a personal email address and password. Then they're going to answer this question about student type. So they will answer whether they are a student at a public high school, private high school, if they are a homeschool student or a community college student. And then this is that student consent and release form. Essentially, it just provides them with a little bit of information about FERPA and the Illinois School Student Records Act. So it lets them know why their information is protected and why they need to give consent for their information to be shared. They will just click that they have read and agreed to the agreement above with that checkbox, and that if they are under 18, parent information is required for consent. So then they're going to go ahead and start filling out student information. So that's going to be their first name, last name, date of birth, phone number, again, personal email address, home address, and then their city and state. Then for parent information, again, this is only required if the student is under 18. So here they're going to enter their high school name, and then if they are under 18 years old, that's going to be grayed out if their birthday indicates that they're over 18. Otherwise, they have to select that they are under 18, and then they just have to enter their parents' first and last name. And then the parent is going to see pretty similar information for that consent piece. Again, just some information about FERPA and the Illinois School Student Records Act. And they just have to type their name into that signature box to provide their signature. And then here's those optional questions for high school juniors. Like I said, it's completely optional whether or not they want to answer these. They do not affect OCCA eligibility at all. It's just for demographic purposes. So there's a question about gender identity, their race and ethnicity, and then the level of education completed by either of their parents. So essentially first generation status. And then they have the option to opt in to ISAC College Q&A text messages. This is a text messaging service that allows them to get updates related to financial aid. So when applications become available and reminders. So while it's recommended, I think it's a great tool for them to opt into this text messaging service. It is optional. And then they're going to go ahead and submit the opt-in form. Once that opt-in form has been submitted, students can make changes, or if they decide that they no longer want to participate in the program, they can resend their application as long as they do so before that May 22nd deadline passes, because once that passes, they can no longer make changes or resend their application. So I will get into, when we talk about gap access, kind of why some changes might need to be made. One example could be, let's say that a student puts their nickname instead of their legal name. When we get into the gap access piece, you'll see why that's so important. But just keep this in mind that if they do need to make any changes, they can do so as long as it's before the May 22nd deadline. So now we're going to get into the frequently asked questions. So I did touch on this already, but I do want to make it clear this is a bit of an update. Are Illinois students who attend out-of-state high schools eligible to receive one-click college admit offers? So the answer is no. The program is based on attending an Illinois high school, not where a student lives. So if a student lives in Illinois, but they go to a high school out of state, so this is pretty common in my area because some people would choose to, for example, go to the private high schools in St. Louis. In that case, they would not be eligible to participate in one-click college admit. And then, is opting in a commitment to attend a college? I did say this already, but I will say it again. No, opting in simply allows colleges to share admissions offers. It does not require students to enroll. So particularly if you have those students who are maybe kind of on the fence about whether or not they want to go to college, that should not necessarily deter them from opting in because they're not committing to that institution. Students are also free to continue exploring their college choices. So even if they want to continue looking at, out-of-state colleges or private colleges, that's completely fine. Opting in does not prevent them from doing so. And then, do students just opt in junior year and then create their Common App account senior year and start adding schools? The answer is yes. So as long as they use the same email address for the opt-in form that they do to create their Common App account, which is a pretty important piece, right, that they use the same email. Come their senior year, the student will start receiving their direct admissions offers. So now we're going to take a look at gap access. If you're not familiar with the Gap Access portal already, this is essentially an online portal that is used for application submissions, determining program eligibility, and payment requests for various ISAC administered programs. The one-click college admit opt-in data for the class of 2027 is now available in Gap Access, so we'll be able to take a look at an example of what that will look like. Users do need to get access from their primary administrator to see OCCA data. So if you are unable to see your class's OCCA data in Gap Access, this may be because your primary administrator hasn't granted that access yet. So I would recommend reaching out to them. That is typically a principal, so that would be one way to troubleshoot that. So when you access the one-click college admit homepage, counselors will go ahead and just log into Gap Access. And then in the top right-hand corner of the page, there is a programs option. So you would click on that programs option and then select the one-click college admit option. So here is an overview of what that homepage looks like. Just as a reminder, it is only going to show the opt-in data for the class of 2027 at this point. So we are going to take a look at each of these sections individually. Starting off with the school information section of the homepage. So this is located on the top left of the homepage. This is where you can find information like school name, school type, school code, school address and phone number, and then the principal's phone number and address as well. Then in the top middle of the homepage, you can find that opt-in count. So it shows in this example, 67 students have opted in. Shows their graduation year and the roster size. Then you can again see opt-ins and that kind of smaller information. And then it'll also show information like completed FAFSA, students who have completed a FAFSA opt-out, opt-ins who have been admitted, students who have opted in that have completed a FAFSA, and students who have opted in that have completed their FAFSA opt-out. So one thing that I do want to point out is that all of that FAFSA related information on the right, that is just for your own data tracking purposes here. This is still separate from the Financial Aid Application Completion Initiative section of Gap Access. So having that information here does not fulfill the FCI requirement. This is just for your own purposes so you can kind of track where your students are at. And then over on the top right of the homepage is where you'll find the percentage of students that have opted in. So that blue bar refers to your class roster size, which I believe for this example was 523. And then the gray bar refers to the number of students who have opted in, which was 67. So you can see that visualization here, and then it automatically generates that as a percentage. So you can see that 12.8% of this class's students have opted in. And then here you can see the student roster. So this is where you're going to find information like student name, date of birth, unweighted GPA, weighted GPA, whether or not they have completed the FAFSA opt-out form, and then whether or not they have completed their FAFSA. You can also filter the roster in two different ways. You can filter it to show opt-ins only. So if you only want to see your students that have opted in, you can filter it that way. Or you can filter it to show students who are not recognized in your class roster only. So we'll get into that in just a minute about why a student might show as not recognized or how you can use that tool. And then you can also filter and search that column. So if you want to search for a specific student, you can do that as well. And then I also want to touch on the two different icons that you can find on the home page. The first is that icon. It's like a little person inside of a square. If you hover over that, you will see that student's personal information. So you'll find their address, date of birth, phone number, email address, again, school information. So that includes school name, school code, school address, and then their parent and consent information. So that would be the parent's first and last name and signature as well. And then here's that not recognized icon window. That is just a question mark inside of a square. And this would be if you want to mark a student as not recognized. This could be for several different reasons. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. So you can mark a student as not recognized if they are not a student who is enrolled at your school. This can happen for several different reasons. Most likely because the student's name, date of birth, and school in their opt-in form all have to match exactly what is on the student roster for that data match to successfully occur. So one thing that could happen is if you have, for example, near me, there's a Belleville East and a Belleville West. It would be pretty easy for a student who's going through that opt-in form, maybe not paying the closest attention, to accidentally select the wrong school. Then that would show them to show up in a class roster where they don't go to that school. Another common mistake that we see is that if the student's name does not match the name on their roster. So if they go by a nickname and they put that nickname instead of their legal name, but they're in their class roster under their legal name, right? That would cause that data match to not occur. It could also be if they have two last names and they put a hyphen in one place and not the other, or they skip the hyphen when they're supposed to put the hyphen. All of those little details can cause that data match to not occur. So if the student's name does not match the name as it is listed on the roster, you can ask the student to correct their name. Remember that they can make corrections to their application as long as they do so before the May 22nd deadline, and that rematch will automatically occur. And like I said, this is in bright red because it's so important that all of those data discrepancies do have to be resolved before the May 22nd opt-in deadline. So those are kind of the ways that you can use that filtering tool. If you want to search your students that are not recognized, and maybe you can recognize, oh, I know that student, they put their nickname, then you can follow up with that student and let them know that they need to make that correction. And now we're going to take a look at the GPA data transfer piece. So for the data collection process, data for both One-Click College Admit, or OCCA, and the ISAC State Scholar Program, which you will see abbreviated as SSP, will be collected through an annual high school data collection process at the end of the academic year. So that data collection begins May 18th, and then the required data has to be submitted to ISAC no later than July 1st. Remember, July 1st is that hard deadline to ensure timely OCCA data matching as well as related summer follow-ups. So just to give you all a heads up, ISAC is finalizing some standardized templates, supporting resources, including the SSP data layout guide and the SSP user guide are being updated, so stay tuned for that. Then the layout guidance and timeline for high school data collection will be posted online soon with that May 18th open date and the July 1st deadline. So this is not a user guide, but it will provide guidance on what the process is, and it will help you to draw that distinction between the direct admissions and state scholars program submissions. We will be incorporating this guidance in our upcoming training webinars. So like I said, just stay tuned for those coming up. And then high school counselors will still be able to choose one of two different electronic methods for submitting their data. You can use an upload function of the Excel spreadsheet to upload that spreadsheet to Gap Access, or you can do the online data entry in Gap Access. Either method is fine. And then for the data collection population piece, high schools do have to provide data for the entire class of juniors, even if a student does not appear to meet state scholar program eligibility criteria. So remember that just because a student does not qualify for the state scholar program, they still could meet the GPA requirements of various schools. So one data entry will be used for both the State Scholar Program and OCCA. And like I said, a student that doesn't meet the eligibility for SSP might still qualify for direct admissions through OCCA. So that's why it's one process for two programs. For the data collection fields, for OCCA specifically, the only required data field that is needed is the student's sixth semester unweighted GPA. Along with that high school profile, these are the required student fields to include. So for the student data, that is going to include their first and last name, their permanent home address, their city, state, and zip code where they reside, and their date of birth. And then for the student's sixth semester GPA data, they have to submit their unweighted GPA. That part is mandatory, but you can also submit a weighted GPA if that is available and if it would benefit the student. So for example, if a student's weighted GPA is higher than their unweighted GPA, it is optional to submit that to benefit the student. Then again, they submit the student's sixth semester class rank for State Scholars Program. And there are disqualification codes for SSP, which are provided in the SSP guides. And now we're coming up on the end of this presentation. I do want to give you all some resources before we wrap up. So first and foremost would of course be the one-click college admit resources page. Here you can find various resources to help families navigate one-click college admit. So you can find how to opt-in walkthroughs. The walkthrough is just kind of an walkthrough of the opt-in form. It is less than 10 minutes, so it shows how.
Right, it looks like my colleague might be having some technical difficulties.
So I'll go ahead and take it over from here.
Okay, give me 1 second, Eddie. All right, I made you presenter.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm Eddie Brambila, Managing Director of College Access Systems at ISAC. So I'll start with this slide, going in there, and then maybe I'll touch some of the Q&A, so that everybody can see them. So yeah, we have a lot of resources to help you, to help you as counselors, college access practitioners, help students get through this process. Just to go through it, we do have how to opt-in walkthroughs. So we created YouTube videos of the actual walkthrough in real time. So you can go out there and a student can pick who they are, whether that's a high school junior, a parent of a high school junior, or a community college student. And in real time, they can see exactly what it is that needs to happen in order to opt in. So they range between 5 and 6.5 minutes, so that you can see it's actually pretty quick, but all of the information is on there. There's FAQs for juniors, FAQs for seniors, informational webinar recording, and downloadable materials for counselors. So on the downloadable materials, you'll be able to get postcard size flyers, full-length flyers that have a QR code briefly explaining the program, and then again allowing students to just go ahead and click that and go through the process.
I'm back.
All right. If you want, Nicole, I'm already started. I'll go through this.
Okay, yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi just cut out on me.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
So the one-click admit workshop toolkit is part of one of the resources out there. So if you go to the one-click admit website, there'll be a link to the toolkit there. You can also find this on our website. So it does provide an overview of the work, an overview of the OCCA workshop, which means if you want to put together a workshop, you can use this toolkit and it'll show you the different settings that you can do that. Whether it's an in-person setting, an in-class setting, a virtual setting that you can do after school, whatever the case is, it'll provide you a step-by-step description, a pre and post workshop checklist to ensure that you have everything in place. Also any follow-up steps if necessary, a list of student and parent FAQs that you can rely on to answer any questions. And then also if you need it, just a quick, a small short script for workshop facilitation, just to keep the things moving along, to help you through that process. Here's one of the things that we came across. So, I mean, I'll say this is a very, this is a learning year, right? We're going to learn a lot from this year. This is one of those things where we are clearly and really riding the bike while we're trying to build it as well. So we are learning a lot. And we did pick up on one of the schools. One of the things that they did was, as a pop-up on their website, this comes up, right? So if anybody goes to their website, this is an immediate pop-up that shows up. So if students are getting to the website or parents are accessing the website, this just reminds them or lets them know that one-click admit is an option for high school juniors who can get a leg up and apply for admission to the state universities with, again, hitting the highlights, right? So based on GPA with no application fees, essays, or letters of recommendation, necessary, and it's all done for them. So just, something to keep in mind. If there are other things that you are already doing or that you've already heard or that you've heard of, please send them our way. We really want to take these opportunities to highlight things that schools are doing across the state and share them, because I didn't, I would have never thought of this, but it's a pretty easy lift, and they could have done that. ISAC, obviously the ISAC core, hopefully you guys are all familiar with the ISAC core, but they are definitely trained and ready to support anything that you may need, not just with OCCA, but of course with everything else down the college going process, whether it's additional complementary services to help with the admission side, or definitely, and of course, the financial aid side. So please reach out to your local core member if you have any issues locating your local core member. If for any reason we might not have one in your area, please go to the website. We will have somebody who is assigned to your area, even though they may not live there. And if you have any questions, please feel free, reach out to us at ISAC, and we'll make sure that we help in any way that we can. There is also an option that we created this year, that we brought up this year, and it's been working really well. It's the ISAC booking through Microsoft Teams. And basically what that is a student can schedule a 15 to 30-minute window with a meeting with one of our core members, and they can virtually get the help they need. They can screen share if necessary, walk them through any process, whether it's OCCA, whether it is a FAFSA, whatever may be needed. They can work together and help that family through the process. It's been really, really helpful this year. We've been able to increase our reach drastically, to students who we would not be able to reach any other way. So this is really helpful. I also know, hopefully it might be on another slide, but that we are in fact creating or hosting virtual workshops on there for students during the evenings, and for students and parents to go through there. So upcoming one-click college admit webinars for professionals. These things we're updating. This is, will probably be the same as this one, but a little different as we have new information. As I've said, we're building this as we're writing it. The next few scheduled ones are April 14th, May 1st, and May 18th. So that you don't have to join to listen to the same information, maybe just to pick up another, 5-6 minutes of different info. Keep in mind, please sign up to our e-messaging if you're already there. We also will be posting updates on various listservs. If you're part of ISCA, the Illinois School Counselors Association, as well as IACAC, we'll be putting information and updates there. Our website will have information. We are putting together a user guide for one-click admit, and information will be sent directly, or emails will be sent directly to gap access contacts for the step-by-step process of how to send information, how to send that GPA once that window opens on May 18th. So we are we're putting all this stuff together. We've been working with our partners at IBHE, ICCB, and the State Board of Education to put the information out there to ensure that students get the info. Let's see. I talked about this already. So the ISAC core is hosting virtual one-click college admit workshops. It is a live walkthrough of the opt-in process, and then we'll be able to, answer questions for students as they are, and families as they get on there. So the next one is Thursday, March 26th. That is next week at 12 p.m. We are putting these on, and we are adding workshops weekly. So they are out there. Please, share this information with your students, with your families, and please, just let us know if anything else that we can be helpful with. All right, I feel like we're getting to the final slides here, and then I'll spend a little time answering the questions on the Q&A. But please provide your feedback for today's session by completing an evaluation. So you scan this, and then you'll let us know that if you need CE and or PD hours, submit that evaluation by 4:30 on Tuesday, and then we'll go ahead and make sure that you get that. And then please do not forget to include your Illinois Educator Identification Number. Okay. Let's see. All right. Here's my pitch now. as we get started with this, this is our first year with this program with the juniors opting in, and I really, again, just want to be 100% transparent as we're going through this. So, legislation was signed on this on June 30th of 2025, and we had 45 days to get it up and running. So we were fortunate to have a team together that was able to get the opt-in form, get all the rules in place, put that out there so that students can in fact start opting in. As we've been going through, hopefully you've already engaged with some of the processes that we've put in place, but we were able to work with ISBE to get a student roster and then start matching that with the opt-ins that were coming in. At this point, every school has the ability to log into Gap Access and see what students in their class, their junior class, have opted in. So that is, one of the things that we've put in place. We are working, we've worked through the process of figuring out how to get GPAs in for all the students who are opting in. And luckily, we were able to utilize the same format and same process that we're utilizing for State Scholar already, which the majority, I think about 95% of schools in Illinois already participate with the State Scholar programs. So we're able to utilize the same process. Yes, the timeline is a little tighter. And we're gonna, work with you all to ensure that you get all of the questions that you may have answered to get all of us on the same page and get that information there for the students. As of, the momentum has been picking up. As of this morning, we were at 5,000, like 4,996 students who've opted in from public schools, private schools, and a couple of homeschool students. So the momentum has picked up. That's almost 1,000 students from last week. So we're seeing the increase every week, and that's of course thanks to you all who are putting the message out there. We're still learning, and we're going to learn a lot. And so I do hope that you take the time to send us information, send us feedback. You can send the feedback to info@oneclickadmit.org, or you can send it to isac.outreachtraining@illinois.gov. Please let us know what is working, what is not working. While we may not be able to, solve all of the issues that are coming in, we will put them on a list, prioritize them, and be able to work through them and make the program better for better for the student, better for administering it, and making sure that it is doing what it's supposed to do. Okay. I left one answer. I left one of the questions half answered. Actually, I didn't even answer it. There's a question from Maureen Mann who says, for students looking to apply to specific programs for, let's say, UIC or UIUC, do they then need to submit another application on Common App and pay the application fee, or is there another process for one-click admit applicants? So I said I'd split this question into two answers. So the first one is UIC and UIUC are not directly admitting any students through the one-click admit program. Okay, what they are doing is we are sharing information. Actually, we have the UIUC and UIC, as Nicole stated, we're giving ISAC their threshold for the outreach campaign. And what that means is that by a student opting in, if they meet the criteria for UIUC and UIC's outreach campaign, in the email that they get from Common App, aside from saying what schools they were directly admitted to, it will also include a message sort of to the, we're finalizing the actual text, but it should say something like, based on your GPA, you are encouraged to apply to UIC and or UIUC. Okay, so that's the extent of the outreach campaign that we are working with those two schools. Now, I will say the direct admit for any school is going to be for their general admission. Okay, so if students are in fact thinking about going into engineering, architecture, nursing, right, all of those specialized, little bit more specialized programs that may require additional information, then that would be said in that letter, in the email to the student. So when the student clicks on, I'm at Northern, I'm going to click on Northern University's direct admit offer, then it would say, congratulations, you've been admitted. If you are thinking about going into a specialized program, connect with us for additional requirements. So that is the way that's going to work. And because the admissions was already there, most of the time that an application fee would be waived. Now, UIC or UIUC are not waiving any application fees based on this one-click college admit. So a student who would be receiving that message about encouraged to apply, they will in fact have to apply through whatever method they would prefer for the traditional application with those two schools. So I hope that answers that question. Anybody on our training team, actually, I'm going to go through these, but are you able to open up the mics in case anybody wants to ask a question?
Yes.
All right. Where do counselors upload transcripts to Common App? So I will say that there are no transcripts to be sent for the matching part, right? So grades are verified. So end of sixth semester grades, which are typically the ones that students are going to be using to apply for in the fall, those are all going to be part of this direct admit, because you are sending ISAC GPA for that. At that point, that is going to be sent to the schools. That is the direct admissions offer it is based off of that. So it's verified GPA. Now, transcripts, right? Transcripts will be necessary. Definitely end of year transcripts. And if there are other needs for transcripts throughout the process for the admission process of enrollment, then at that point, transcripts would have to be submitted. You would submit that however you normally would, whether that is using parchment, through the Illinois Transcript Exchange, or whether that is through Common App. So the transcription sending process is not going to change. Let's see. That was that. What if you accidentally hit the question mark indicating not recognized? Ooh, Michelle, I think you can undo that. But I am not sure. So if somebody on our team can just write
Eddie?
that down. Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I let them know that we would look into that question.
Oh, thank you. I see that.
It's Michelle. So I just have a question on this tech part of it, because when I go into Gap Access, and we have, a lot of students in our district, right? So over 13,000 students. So I see our class of 2026 in there, right? But then as the kids are completing this, they're all saying not recognized. So I'm just wondering, like, when, and this is maybe my ignorance, so I apologize, but when was the districts notified to open, to upload class of 2027? And we're talking about also the other piece of it, because typically that happens in the fall, but it looks like I'm going to need my 2027 rosters uploaded sooner than later. And then it's that May 22nd date. I mean, kids wait to the last minute. That's the week of finals. A lot of schools are ending. Like, there's no way that these kids and the parents are putting the right names in, and then it's going to close, and then we can't match them. And now the kid was supposed to log back in to change. Like, that to me is not student focused or friendly. So we're going to have to find a way that we're able to match those kids, because that timeline, that is so tight for us. And we have graduation and final transcripts and final grades. Like, that is a lot at that point for a school district to do this. And you're asking the college, the other part of it is you're asking the counselors, to upload this. Like, in my district, my counselors are leaving. So we're putting this at the district level to upload, and so I think those are some of the things you have to remember, especially for maybe a smaller district. If the school closes that week, there's no requirement for counselors to come back and look and start uploading GPAs. So you just have to think of a more like logistical way to be able to get that data uploaded. And this is also assuming now this is going to be 6 semester grades. A lot of our kids take summer school. So that's not even going to be when we upload transcripts in the fall. That GPA may look a little bit different if a kid took summer school, you know, so
Yeah.
there's lots of things. I have questions on the tech part of it. And I did not have my tech team come in yet, just because I wasn't sure where we are with all of this. So it would be very helpful to have more of a technical lens on what this whole process is going to look like. And, you know, some guidelines on, you know what, your roster should be uploaded, you know, whatever. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Michelle. And I mean, yeah, that is not doesn't, I mean, I guess I'll say you're not I mean, you're not the first one, and you're certainly not going to be the last to bring these up. And we agree with you 100%. So we are really, really trying to figure this out. I mean, just so you know how we got to these dates. Unfortunately, it's legislation. We didn't
Sure.
come up with it. I don't mean to say who did or whatever the case is, but we did not come up with the dates or the deadlines of when these things had to happen. So what we tried to do was push out the deadline as much as possible to give folks opportunity to get everything in place. You know, this is the first year. So again, we know that we are going to miss a lot of students who are just hearing about this now, right? This opened up August 15th. So from August 15th to May 22nd, there's been a lot of messaging. It wasn't on top of everybody's priority for students to do this in the fall. Now we're getting to this, so we know that we are going to miss students. We know that you know it's the first year. I mean, yeah, it's I don't know. It's the scary part of implementing policy at a statewide level when we really only had 45 days to get it up and running and had to develop the whole process for doing it. So what we've tried to do, as I said, is you know trying to utilize the systems and the mechanisms that already exist to not create a much heavier lift for those of you who are doing this. You know,
No,
it
I
is going to be a
appreciate
lift.
that. And
Um,
I thank you for everything you're doing so far. It's been helpful, and we've actually pushed out a lot of information to our families already. And so I'm hoping that the students have good response with this. But I just think we have to think proactively.
yeah,
On May 22nd, that closes and a kid puts their nickname or preferred name. What do we do to rectify it? Because
yeah,
if
and
it's not super,
I will have a better sense of that. We are working with Common Up now. I just got a workflow for what the process would look for a student. I will actually I'll figure out how to put that either into another webinar, and I should have mentioned this before because I know one of the questions was how do we know what new information is coming through on the webinars. As soon as I get a really good process of what that's going to look like, the training team is going to start recording smaller snippets of videos, you know, maybe like a 5-minute webinar recording or a 5-minute recording on this is what to do if a student is not matched. So we'll put those on our website so that you don't have to sit through a whole webinar hearing the same thing and just to get a new information, but we will start putting those together as information comes through, because there is a whole student journey that shows, you know, if a student doesn't have an email that matches, what happens? If a student matches the email, but their name is incorrect, what happens? So we're working through all of those different scenarios. And that would be helpful for you to know. That way, you know, it's like, okay, if, you know, it may not be that much of an issue. Now, we are using the same process, and hopefully this will help you and others who may feel like this better. We are using the same matching process that we use for the FAFSA completion initiative, right? So if we've got a first name Eddie as opposed to Eduardo, same last name, same birth date, we'll match that because we know that's the student attending a certain high school, right? It'll be very, I mean, we match probably at like a 98% rate already, so we should be able to clear a lot of those up. A lot of it is going to be students who unfortunately may select a different high school than the one they're attending, right? We're dealing with one right now that student clicked Bloom instead of Bloom Trail, or I mean, yeah, Bloom, you know, Bloom Township instead of Bloom Trail. And so those are the ones that we're fixing and we're looking at, and those are actually going to be specific outreach targeted towards, you know, to the school or to the student. reaching out to the student, say, hey, you're not appearing on the correct roster. What school did you mean to put in? So there are things in place that are happening right now to clear that up, particularly for the students who already submitted but are not being matched. So we're looking at that now, and we will, put information out. So again, I know this doesn't solve all of your problems and your worries, but please continue to let us know what those are, so that we do keep them in mind, because you all are the ones who are gonna, figure them out before we do, or at least let us know and give us a heads up as to what we need to pay attention to. So I do appreciate that, very much, and we'll work on this. I think we probably won't get it. We're certainly not going to get it right on year one, but I do hope that year two we're in a better situation, and it just continues to go from there.
We are right at 11, but Val had a question, I believe.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. My question, I'll be brief. I apologize if you already covered this. On the student side, when they are opting in for this process, like I plan to hold some workshops for students coming up in April, and you require parent permission if you're under 18. What does that look like on the student side? My fear is that my kids are just going to click, yep, I have it, without any notification to the parent. Has there been any kind of talk about having like a printed sheet that I send home in advance that the parent signs, so then I see that they actually have that? Or what does that look like to get the parent permission?
So we tried to do this as, again, right? We're not, I appreciate what you're saying. And I would say this, if that is what you would want to do, you can do that. If you want to have a permission, signed, that then you will have to keep on file for whatever reason, you can absolutely do that. We, did not decide that, because that would be another burden, right? So that's, I guess that's the answer to that. You are more than welcome to create a form and collect that on the front end. If you want to collect it as part of registration for students next year, for juniors, sophomores this year who are registering for next year, you can do that now. However it is that you may want to do that, you can. But that is not part of the requirement of the legislation, because once again, that would be adding another burden for you to collect those up front, file them, and another record to keep on track for something. But that is not something that we are looking at. We hope that the student is working through this with the family. They have permission to do so, and that's that. I'm sorry, I'm not giving more guidance other than we really don't want to put that another burden on you.
Thank you for your answer. So on the parents or on the student side, then they're just when it says you have parent permission, they can just type in their parent name.
I would assume that if they have parental permission, that they can do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me just quickly see, and then if anyone wants to stay on, please do so. If you got to go. I'm just making sure that I have everything here.